Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sanghang saranang gacchami. That is how Lord Buddha would first try to create that sense of tranquility in the minds of the listeners, because the Dhamma is so precious, and we cannot just do it haphazardly. We cannot just listen to it in a disrespectful manner. When I say disrespectful, and I'm not just talking about the physical things that we do or not do, but the mind's position. Just like when students come and say, Bhante, I want to sit on the floor in full lotus in order for me to really go in deep meditation. And I say, don't worry about the physical posture. It's the position of your heart that matters. It's the position of the mind that matters. How you're sitting. So Dhamma starts first and foremost with the how we are living this thing called my life. How are you handling your relationships? What is your relationship with yourself? Yesterday, I gave another talk somewhere else, and I was mentioning to the listeners how, as a therapist, I used to tell patients to first go ahead and look at themselves in the mirror before leaving the house. And they would ask why, usually putting up a resistance. I would say, well, because I need you to see yourself first. Or do you have a scary face or not? You're going to expose yourself to the world with that face of yours. You better be smiling, not scaring people. And of course, I would say, with tons of compassion, but once they would see as to the intention of why I'm asking them to be smiling, I'm trying to get them to familiarize themselves with the feeling of being vulnerable, to themselves at least. Smile reflects several things. It tells several things to the onlookers, those who witness you. One of them is happiness. It shows the world that you're happy. That's not all. It also shows acceptance. When you smile to someone, you are telling them, I accept you. I accept you. It also shows vulnerability. It shows connection, even connectivity with other beings. It also shows confidence. A person who's always somber, always serious looking, is trying to hide things. You see how many benefits there are. Happiness, acceptance, vulnerability. Vulnerability is not a bad thing, even though our culture has persuaded us and constantly does persuade us that it is something we should shun, push away, not allow. Well, try to be in any relationship without being vulnerable. I challenge you. You will definitely not experience love, for starters. You won't see the beauty of a lotus. It won't allow you to. And similarly, when it comes to the Dhamma, the teachings of Lord Buddha. Yes, I am a Bhikkhu. I teach the Dhamma. Yes, but I'm not just saying that because Lord Buddha is my teacher. But the teaching, he belongs to everyone, all generations, all beings. That's why anyone and everyone could go to Lord Buddha with their questions. That is engaged Buddhism, something that we constantly hear about nowadays. But I want to mention, I want to just focus more on that vulnerability, whether it's the smile or listening to the Dhamma. This path is based on wisdom, discernment, having the ability to look at something and to see if you could identify things that are wholesome and things that you know will be benefiting you. Basically, the way you go and choose your celery, your lettuce at the market, the kind of sandwiches you want to eat, the food, the type of bread, the type of rice. This is not belittling or, demeaning the Dhamma in any way. I want to highlight our pragmatic approach when it comes to normal situations. When you go and choose your outfit, what are you doing? When you go and choose your educational program that you want to pursue, whether it's engineering, becoming a GP, becoming a mechanic, becoming a painter, an artist, don't you do some studying? Even when you go and buy a car or try on an outfit, what do? You try it on. You take the car on a test drive. But for some reason, when it comes to the Dhamma, we just gulp things down and never ask where it came from, whether it is the true Dhamma or not. Why is that? There's a lack in responsibility on our part. See, the Buddha did his thing. He attained, he struggled, he attained, he understood, he opened up the door. He opened up the gates to the deathless. Somehow we still have it 26 centuries later. Still intact to a great extent. But how many of us are actually pursuing the Dhamma, trying to understand it? How is this going to benefit me? That's the connection that I try to draw between the type of food you're eating and your choices in it. Is this going to heal me or harm me? We all look, I think, at the back of the products we buy, the nutritional facts. And if you can't read the item, the ingredient, it's got so many syllables, guess what? It's not good for you. It's loaded with chemicals. If it's orange juice, I expect it to be orange juice, not some food coloring added to it and things. Okay, so if I have that intellect, that reasonable common sense about what I put in my body, well, why not about the thing that is going to dictate my state of well-being throughout life, my relationships included, my relationship to my body, to my loved ones, my family, the environment. So Dhamma is not something you add on. It's not something you go and study in books only. The Dhamma comes alive in your heart. So do the kilesas, so do the defilements that we all have, so long as we're not arahants, we're not fully awakened yet. That's where it resides. Nibbana, if it happens, it's not going to happen over there somewhere in a kuti, in a hut, somewhere in the mountains, in the jungles. No. It's going to happen now, right here, in this moment that you live. And that moment is continuous. It's a present continuous tense, ing, at the end. It's a verb. So how do we approach? If you already are following along, you see that there's a common sense base to it. It's a practically organized structure. This thing called Dhamma. What is it? Well, it's based on the Four Noble Truths. Are we all suffering? Do you know suffering? If you sit in that chair for long enough time, you're going to definitely feel some suffering. But that's a mundane example. You could just think about your life and your relationship. Things that you like to happen, but they're not happening. Things that you desperately want to not happen, but they're happening. There you go. Your examples for suffering. The tension, the fear, the worry, the panic. You know that feeling, panic? What we've been, well, being fed for the last 3 years or so, everywhere you turn. Everybody's panicking and making you panic. And if you don't panic, there's something wrong with you. We're going to look at you suspiciously. That is terrible. That's not normal. Smiling is normal. But they made us even look at a smile and a moment of comfort as if there's something dubious about it, as if it's something we should doubt. Health has become such a rarity. So the Dhamma is based on relieving mental suffering. The Buddha was the first mental health clinician, if you will. He was the one who designated both physical illness and mental illness 2,600 years ago. But he didn't stop there. He taught us about the presence of dukkha, suffering, unsatisfactoriness, or dissatisfaction with things in our lives. But if he had stopped there, that would have made his path a very pessimistic path. He didn't stop there. He told us, he diagnosed, he said there is this thing called suffering. But he also gave us the cure. He showed us the way to end it. That's called nirodha. Dukkha, nirodha. Cessation of suffering. Can I ask you not to cross your legs, please? Sorry. I have to remind listeners sometimes. You didn't know, it's not disrespect. But I have to inform people because as a bhikkhu, I cannot continue teaching the Dhamma because I have rules. And one of the rules says that if listeners are sitting crossed arms and crossed legs or either or, I can't teach because the person closed the doors of accepting. And that's not the case here, I feel, but I have to remind. I didn't know this myself when years ago my teacher said, don't cross your arms. I said, but I didn't. And then he explained it. Anyhow, it's a lovely path, the Dhamma, but it's a path to be lived. It's not something that you go get degrees in, titles in. And no, you don't have to become a monk. You don't have to shave your head or wear robes. You could start with your own personal life. How? I was explaining yesterday, the uniqueness of the Dhamma is, there's many, but one really loud one for me is the fact that it is a step-by-step process. It shows you step-by-step what you do to get what, and the signposts along the way. And it does have a graduation date. And that is what we call Nibbana, full awakening. It's no guesswork. We don't gamble with our lives because it's so precious. When asked as to how precious this human birth is, Lord Buddha gave several examples, but one of them is this. I mention it in the book. He said, imagine there is a sea turtle living at the bottom of the ocean. And it's a special turtle because it rises up to the surface once every 100 years. And it is a blind turtle with only one eye functioning. And imagine that there's a yoke, a single-eyed yoke, the one that they would put around the buffalo's neck so that it could, to plow the fields, etc. So there's a wooden yoke that someone has tossed into the open ocean, limitless ocean, and it's floating about. Your birth as a human being is like that turtle coming up that, once every 100-year period, and it pops its head out of the surface of the water, and it looks up with the good eye pointed up, and it so happens that the yolk has floated, and it came right on top of the area where it's popping its head out of. So it's pulling its head out of the water and in between the yolk, and looks up with the good eye and sees the full moon. I call that rare, don't you? We don't approach life like this. It's like a push, shove, push, tension here, tension there. We want things to happen. It's like we're like that Atlas from Greek mythology, pushing the world up the cliff. And the cliff is not that, rough terrain where it can give you some good treading, but no. It's slippery and it's raining, and somebody poured a bucket of oil. As you're pushing and pulling yourself up with this world of pain and expectations up, how in the world are we going to be happy in all of that chaos? So we look at pleasures for happiness, as if pleasures give us happiness. That's another wrong view. Happiness has nothing to do with your pleasures, But we grew up in a society that says you run away from pain, you go straight to pleasures, and that is your treasure chest of happiness. But we all know they don't last. Remember that bit about dukkha, suffering? That's what we're greeted with. The person who's celebrating their youthfulness, their youth, their beautiful hair, the skin, the health, the muscles, or the beautiful weight, finally that target weight, you got it. Years ago, I used to be a fitness trainer, by the way. And I used to help elderly people and those who had serious physical illnesses and surgeries they were recovering from. And also those who were trying to lose weight or protect the weight that their ideal goal or wanted to be athletes. So there's different ways of training each of these individuals, of course. But then I would also try to, years ago, but I still would put Dhamma in there, in between, edgewise, squeezing it in somehow. As the person is saying, I need you to get me those six-packs so that I can look good for my, girlfriend or something. I would ask them, why? Well, because it makes me feel good. I said, okay, wonderful, why? So after a series of whys, apostrophe S, the person really gets annoyed with me and they say, well, because I want to be happy. Okay, why don't we start from there? The six-packs, sure, we'll work on that and you'll get it if you follow these, the routines and things. But ultimately, it's going to go away. The beautiful hair, the look on the skin and the shininess of it, the wrinkles will come. The gray hair or no hair will happen. But if you are standing on solid ground of true happiness, you're not going to be shaken by all that. That sense of confidence comes when we understand that there are these two arrows, one of which is unavoidable, and that is called the human body. That, Lord Buddha said, you cannot get rid of. These two arrows we are shot with the moment we are born. One is the physical body, having a physical body. That means your knees are going to hurt, your back is going to hurt at one point, you're going to get sick. And if anything, even if you didn't get sick at all throughout life, you're going to die at the end, after aging, if you're lucky. And this is for everyone, everything, anything that comes from a conditioned set of circumstances. That's what the Dhamma teaches. But this is only one of the arrows. The other arrow, Lord Buddha said, by the way, remember the mental health issue? The illness, the mental illness that Lord Buddha delineated? That is what you can free yourself from. And that is why we meditate. That is why we practice the Dhamma. First and foremost, to get rid of that arrow, that sharp arrow. And it's poisoned, by the way, the arrow. We call it poison because it is the arrow of ignorance. This we find, well, the antidote of this we find in the Noble Eightfold Path, starting with samadhi, which is right view, having the right perspective, really understanding what is it that this is why I wanted us to look carefully at why and what part, what is the Dhamma that people talk about? Is it Dhamma? Truly? I used to ask people years ago, especially Westerners who have taken on, they call themselves Buddhists. Wonderful, fine, I guess. And I would ask them why. I'm just curious. And they would say, well, because of such and such a teacher, a very well-known, let's say, the Dalai Lama. I say, great. And is that it? Because of a person? What about him? Let me know. Tell me. I want to know why. Well, he just smiles a lot. Okay, that's beautiful. And it has to be viscerally felt. It has to be truly meaningful, existentially, something that matters to us, for your well-being. Who cares if I smile or the Dalai Lama smile? What is it that you're getting out of this? The understanding needs to be well placed. And it starts from right view. And that is something that's terribly lacking in the world today, including in Dhamma circles, because Dhamma is being washed down, dumbed down, in fact. Many teachers are catering to the palates of listeners and whatever is acceptable, whatever is in fashion. Many teachers have become entertainers. Years ago, I was a layman at the time, and I was teaching Dhamma, and in a center in Los Angeles. And one of the dayakas, the supporters, an elderly gentleman, he approached, a very respectful man, a Buddhist for many years that I knew at that time for over 15, 20 years. 15. And he said, could you make your talks more, like he was talking, we were talking in private. He said, could you make your talks more entertaining? And I said, I'm sorry? Could you make it more fun? I said, what do you mean? He said, you give a lot of information on the Dhamma. 3 of this, 4 of that, 8 of this, and you explore, you give us details and how we connect, but it's kind of serious. We're just here, once every week on a Sunday. We want to feel good. Like such and such an Ajahn, he's very, gives stories, it's funny, this and that. And I said, oh, so you want me really, now I understand what you mean by entertaining. And I said, do you know that Lord Buddha was not an entertainer? He was not an entertainer. He was a teacher. He was a human, engaged, loving, caring, compassionate teacher. He was also a physician in that sense. He would give just the right dose of the right medicine at the right time to the right person. But that's what we've come to, sadly. And I said, I'm sorry, I won't be able to entertain you. This is what will happen. This is because this is the goal of the Dhamma, to wake people up and to give you your zest for life back. Life is not a maximization of pleasures and minimization of painful ones, painful experiences. I was mentioning this yesterday to the group as well. That's what our lives have become, though. Just multiply the more occasions, outsmart life and its conditions so you can get more of this, more of this, more of this, more of that, and less of that, less of that, less of that. The things that we don't like. That's completely missing the point of the Dhamma. Many people call themselves Buddhists. You know, they go on retreats, this, that. They have many, many teachers. They could list them. But there isn't that transformation that needs to happen in you at every moment, starting with a smile. What is a smile? A smile is you saying, okay, I see you suffering. I see this is there. There is the two arrows, right? The arrow of the physical body, which is going to hurt. Okay, let's face it. It's going to hurt. Fine. But do I have to be attached to it? Someone was asking the other day, why does it have to be, their parent is not doing well. And why him? Why him? Why him? Why does it have to be him? And I said, with all due respect and compassion to you, but can I ask you another question? Don't take this the wrong way. I'm just asking. And they said, sure. And I said, why not him? We say that, like you bang you stub your toe somewhere and you say, why did it happen to me? I was going to wear those nice shoes and now I can't wear it for 2 weeks or something. Why me? Well, why not me? Or you lose someone you love. Why not? If it's not going to happen to you, it's going to happen to somebody else. And guess what they're going to feel? They're going to feel the same thing. We're still stuck in the cyclone called dukkha. And that's what we have been stuck in. And that's what Lord Buddha called samsara, the cyclical, unending series of life and death, life and death, life and death, life, death, life, death, life, death, and everything else that comes along with it. That means the loss of loved one, including mom and dad, your loved ones, closest people. And if you're not close to people, including the animals, anything that you feel or you cherish, feel closely to, they're going to be taken. That's life, because we are all conditioned. These are all the results of conditions coming together in a certain way at a certain time based on your desires and obviously your karmic past. But they're unstable. There are several suttas where Lord Buddha asks the monks. Well, there's one with Nandakovada Sutta, where the Venerable Nandaka goes and teaches the bhikkhunis, the female, the nuns, and gives them a talk on the conditionality of life. And he says, asking them, what do you call something that is based on conditions, that changes? And they say it's suffering. So anything that is based on conditions, could that give you happiness ultimately? And they say, no, Bhante. How many times do we ask ourselves that question? When we say, this is it, this is the relationship, this is the one. I've hit that point. I've hit the sweet spot. Yes, and it's going to stick. and we fail miserably. Why? Because it's like going and pinching a piece, well, going to the well, imagine yourself floating, or even when you're floating in the ocean, open waters, and you go ahead and pinch a little bit of the seawater. It's like that. It's futile. Every relationship, everything that you hold valuable, and you stuck yourself to it, life will come and say, I'm going to unstuck you. I'm going to pull your fingers away from it, remove your claw-like grasp of it, starting with your body. This is painful. For that, Lord Buddha taught us the second noble truth, which is our attachment, the reason why we grasp onto things. If I am holding this cup, this mug of tea, which is light for me, but if I go ahead and extend my arm to the side, suddenly the weight distribution is a little bit different. It now is heavier. And if I hold my hand extended like that with this weight unchanging, guess what? It will turn painful, and more so. My muscles will hurt for a few weeks if I continue doing that. Now, is it the fault of the mug that my arm is hurting now? No. Who's holding it? I am. My attachment is this. Attachment is not a word. It's an experience which is fueled by wanting to feel a certain thing, wanting to fight reality, wanting to refuse to see the conditionality, the conditional nature of things, especially this. But where does it come from? My desire to hold it. Now, this is a very neutral example. It could be a relationship. It could be a memory. It could be a memory from your past about how you were compared to now, and you're not the same. Once I was mentioning about this, well, again, we go back to the time when I was training someone as a fitness trainer. I've had many careers over the years. But in this case, the reason why I recall this incident was because I was working with one particular client who used to be a model in Germany. And she was also an actress years ago. But now I was training her, and she was in her mid-60s. She still, she was eating healthy, this and that, vitamins, supplements, all these. But she truly believed that she was going to beat death. Literally. I thought she was kidding. But then after asking her some questions, she really believed it. She was getting special injections, this and that. She really said, I'm going to conquer death. I'm going to live forever. So it's almost bordering insanity. But her unwillingness to let go of her past, because she longed for those years when people gave her that attention. She was on the cover of magazines and things. She wanted those years back, and she couldn't, because people were not even looking at her anymore. And that was torture. That is mental sickness, emotional sickness. That's the second arrow. That we have a control over. I just have to put this thing down, and my arm is back to normal. I don't have a sore bicep, sore triceps. My joints don't hurt. No, because I put it down. Can we put things down? When we were kids, parents would say, mom especially, put that thing down. Probably every child has heard that. I used to hear that a lot. We don't put things down. We keep holding them as if they're fused into our hands or something, or grasp. And that's the reason why we keep going through these cycles of birth, death, birth, death, birth, death. And then we say, oh, my mom is dying, my father is dying. There was a young man once who came to Lord Buddha, and he was asking, Bhante, why do parents die? I feel horrible. And he was in tears. And Lord Buddha, being compassionate towards the young man, and he said, what is greater, in your opinion? All of the waters that are contained within the mighty rivers of India, like Yamuna, Ganges, and all that put together, or all of the waters found in the great oceans in the world? And he says, Bhante, yeah, we have huge rivers. They're pretty mighty, but putting them together still means nothing compared to the oceans, even one of them. So, of course, the oceans are a lot bigger in their quantity of water they contain. And he says, he says, the tears you have cried over mothers and fathers you've had, the tears are far greater in quantity than all of the water contained in all of the oceans and rivers combined. Could you digest that image? The tears we have cried over mother and father. I mean, I don't know, maybe this much is how much I've cried in this life. Perhaps, maybe 2, maybe 3 at the most. Not a bucket full, though. Not even a like house-sized pool. Of course not. Oceans? He wasn't exaggerating, by the way. It's a beginningless lifetimes that we're talking about, samsara. We just have amnesia. We don't remember them unless we meditate and go deep and want to discover. But the mind has to be calm enough for the teacher to allow a student to go and explore those things, because yeah, it's heavy sometimes. So the person really was taken aback by what that image looks like. And he's like, oh no. It was like, in working with patients, sometimes people would come with bereavement, grief, loss of someone, just like that young man. And I would ask them, without belittling their situation, without being heartless, I would say, do you think this is something that only happens to you? And they say, of course not. And I said, please, before you answer, process that. Of course not. Answer. They stop and they say, yeah, actually, I think I'm being unfair. Go into this building in front of you. Go into the other houses in your neighborhood. Ask them, have there been any deaths in your family? What are they going to say? What do you think? So what makes my situation so unique? That is similar to you putting down the mug that is full of tea. So this is crucial. So this path is based on wisdom. That is, if you take just that from this discussion on the Dhamma, is really big. It's Nirodha. Nirodha means ending. It also means the no more prison. Transliteration, one of them would be no more prison. We're in prisons, our own making. Just like the person who needs convincing to smile, right? Can you smile? There you go. They've done research on this, both in Hamburg, Germany, and I think in Indiana or somewhere in the US, where they took a group of university students as test subjects, and they had them walk around with a pencil in their mouths throughout the day. Obviously, they were connected to all these sensors, things like that, that were putting all that feed into the computers that the scientists were monitoring. Of course, they also had the blood tests and all that to see sugar levels, this blood pressure. But they discovered something quite amazing. Even though these test subjects were not seeing anything outstanding, anything awesome, the parts of the brain were lighting up, same parts that are responsible for you to feel amazing when you fall in love. You come out of a deep meditation and you feel like, whoa, this is sweet. But the irony was that these people were sitting in a library reading textbooks on medicine and chemistry and philosophy, nothing there to really ignite those fires, as it were, in their brain. But something was doing it. They concluded, the muscles on your face, especially these around the corners of your lips, when you're smiling, they go up. So many muscles are involved. They find the back door to those parts of your brain, causing them to light up, as if you are hugging that best friend of yours that you haven't seen for 15 years. Wow. Just lifting the corners of your lips up, right? And conversely, they discover the opposite takes place also. When cortisol levels go skyrocket in the body, in the brain, when you point them downwards, when you frown, they're also connected with the forehead muscles. But how many of us are truly smiling these days? For 3 years at least, people need special excuses, explanations, and reasons to be smiling. Even kids nowadays have more of a somber look. They don't know how to play. This is wrong. When was the last time you actually went out and played? Yes, as a grown-up. When was the last time you actually played? I'm just asking. Something fun for yourself without any extra stuff. No alcohol, no this, no that, just you. Take off your shoes when next time you're walking on grass, especially freshly cut grass. Bare feet. Ground yourself. Walk on the grass. Go on the sand. Go to the beach. Hear the sound of the waves. That's play. You know? So taking yourself not so seriously is part of the Dhamma. Given the confines of this time period, however, I would like to talk more, especially it's a big topic, but I wanted to kind of whet your appetite a little bit on what Dhamma is. Dhamma releases you from suffering, but only with your help. Lord Buddha showed us the way, but we have to do the work. And the work doesn't have to be a chore like Atlas, pulling up this globe over, on a slippery slope. No. Not taking yourself so seriously. Start with a smile. So I mentioned dukkha, I mentioned samudaya, the arising, the cause, which is my grasping. And as I put the cup down, that is cessation. That is the ending of suffering. That is the pulling out of that poisoned arrow. But how? For that, I mentioned briefly the Noble Eightfold Path, specifically the right view part. That is like you wanting to go to Adelaide or to Queensland. And you're putting it and you're going to drive there. You put it in your GPS. Okay? But instead of putting Queensland, you put down Perth or Melbourne. You're not going to get to Queensland. It's impossible. You're going to go down the other direction. But that's what we do. We constantly are doing this. People say, oh, I'm doing mindfulness. I'm doing mindfulness. How? What is it that you're doing? So the right view is like putting in the right coordinates to get you to where you want to go. You cannot put the coordinates and end up in the wrong direction. It doesn't work. So first and foremost, right view has to be there. Next, right intentionality. Your intentions have to match your view. And then you carry over to speech. What is the conversation like between your ears? How do you address yourself when no one's watching or listening? What are some of the adjectives you use for yourself when you do something wrong? Do you abuse yourself with words? We do that often, if not always. And when we open our mouths, talking to someone else, guess what words will come out? The same words that we were using between the ears. For ourselves now, it's directed to the other person. Mean, unwholesome, hurtful. That's not Dhamma. So the third of the Noble Eightfold Path is right speech, followed by right action. All of these have to have within them, by the way, right view. It's not just like a one-shot deal. Yeah, I'll put the GPS coordinates and that's it. I forget about it and it'll take. No. You keep checking. Is my speech matching my view? Am I harming myself with the words that I say to myself? Meanwhile, I want to practice the Dhamma. Oh, yes, I practice Metta. Yes. I knew people on retreats even doing Metta Bhavana, Metta retreats, loving kindness and all that. And somebody needed help. They were like, hey, hands off. I can't. I'm on retreat. I can't be engaging in helping anybody. Where did the Metta go all of a sudden? How is that? What's the, what's the math behind that in your head? What's going on? So the activity has to match every single thing that came before it. And because of that activity, we have a right livelihood. Your right livelihood has to reflect everything else. So if you talk about compassion, kindness, this and that, and go outside and sell drugs, or promote, or go on strikes and, like protest and, legalize this drug or that weapon or this war, but I'm a compassionate man. I practice Metta. How does that work? Or you say to your son, Johnny, you shouldn't lie. Mommy said, don't lie. And then mommy gets a phone call and she picks up and, or somebody calls and she says, no, I'm not going to pick up. I'm not at home. Johnny's looking at mom and is like, where did that, how does that work? I'm not supposed to lie, but you can? Oh, I think it has to do with age. Okay, so I can when I'm your age. Ah, hypocrisy is born. Fake through and through. So the livelihood has to be, the lifestyle has to be reflecting sammaditi, right view. Then because of that, you maintain that lifestyle through right effort. The effort has to match. So if a person sits to meditate, but they're doing a very superficial type of, they're putting very little effort. Oh, this chair is not comfortable. Okay, they try several. Or the cars go by too much. There's too much, I can't sit, Bhante. They sit 5 minutes. What do you expect? Oh, I'm going to go to the jungle. Oh, have you been to the jungle? There's animals there, birds and insects. They will not let you sleep. It's louder than New York City during rush hour in Manhattan. So, no, it shouldn't matter. The right effort has to be there through and through. Then we have right mindfulness. There's so many different types of mindfulness. I keep telling people, often I've used this example, a sniper that kills people has a perfect mindfulness. They're so sharp, like laser. They honed in on the target whom they will kill. And then you have, so there's a reason why Lord Buddha distinguished right from wrong mindfulness. People talk about how to have better sex with mindfulness, how to make more money in the stock market with mindfulness. People, CEOs in Silicon Valley that create newer and newer AI protocols and algorithms to put people, billions of people, out of jobs. They're practicing mindfulness. San Francisco, you go there, people were giving even certain allowances to their employees because they're dedicating 1 or 2 hours per week to mindfulness. What kind of mindfulness is that? Heartless. It's not mindfulness. That's sneakiness, self-centeredness. And then there is right collectedness of mind, samma samadhi. I don't translate it as concentration because it limits the beauty of samadhi, which Lord Buddha invented, because no such words existed at the time to describe that beautiful, wholesome state of mind where wisdom takes place. So all of these are chained up, linked up together. And you find right view in every single one of them. And that is the fourth noble truth. Again, I'm putting it in a nutshell. Each of these deserves a long desana, a long talk. And I'm sure many, many questions will come up. But I hope this will, at this point, suffice. There's mentions of I do talk about these in more detail in the book, which we have a few copies here. And there's, I'm sure it's not enough for all of you, but you could, it's also available, freely available. Dhamma is free, by the way, cannot be sold. It's priceless. That's why when I wrote it, I wanted it to be completely free, and because that we get it from Lord Buddha. How could you put a price on it? He gave it. He gave his life, 45 years of his life, to us to teach the Dhamma. So, but we do have also PDF versions of it online, and currently there's different translations underway. I think currently there's the Chinese, the Japanese, Sinhalese. Spanish is available. Oh yes, there's a few copies of. There's Italian, that's done. Armenian, it's up. It's up. We just finished it. Russian, German, it's up. So it's many languages. So I'm trying to find someone who could translate it into Arabic. So yeah. So I will stop here and open for questions.
If you have a question, feel free to pop it into the chat. For those who are here in person, you can get some pieces of paper, please, and also pens, and you can write your questions and pass them over to me. You can, of course, also ask questions directly, and of course, the people who are online, you can unmute yourself and ask those questions as well. So, Bhante was just talking about this book, A Manual on Buddhist Meditation and Lifestyle, A Return to the Source. So there's a few copies, hard copies here at Metta Centre. I was also just speaking with Sister about receiving a PDF copy, which I can share with those who are interested. We also have a website called Lotus Library, and it's a Buddhist library online for people to download Buddhist books for free to make it as accessible to the public as possible. So with your permission, we could also include those books and
absolutely
there too.
Sure.
Wonderful. Thank you. We'll share it with everyone. So again, if you'd like some books, we have some hard copies here, and also we'll try to make them available online for everyone. So,
sorry. We had a preemptive question earlier, so it's in there. Okay, good. Okay.
So for those who have questions, please provide them to me, and that will come following this one. So Venerable, are you ready?
Please.
Wonderful. Okay, so Venerable, you talk about Samma Samadhi. Few teachers talk about Samma Samadhi as a deep state of meditation. where there is no sensation of the body, sounds cannot be heard, and a light, nimitta, is a precondition. Would you be able to comment if this is something that is necessary?
That is not samma samadhi when the consciousness, at least for the majority part, a major part of the jhanas are concerned. I'm presuming that is because there's the nimitta mentioned. Lord Buddha, before becoming the Buddha, he was, as Siddhartha Gautama, he was a superlative yogi because he went to the greatest of yogis of his time, Alara Kalama and Uddakarama Puttam. These were the two top meditation yogis of his day in India. Alara Kalama was teaching, the highest teaching that he had was to get the student to experience what we call the realm of nothingness. Nothingness. And these are very sublime states of mind. But ones that you come out of. When you come out of it, there's no personality change. These are the result of suppression. Suppression. So, and the other teacher, Uddakarama Putta, was the son of a teacher who had died. So the son was carrying the legacy, the school, the teaching, but he himself had not attained to the next level, which was the 8th jhana, and that is the realm of neither perception nor non-perception, where the person does not know that they're in this state until they come out. And the teacher has to ask several questions to understand, because it's very complex, let alone for the person who's experiencing it. So Lord Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, very quickly mastered these, to the point where these respective teachers turned to him and said, well, you know what I know. Go ahead and come and teach with me. Let's be co-teachers, because this is the ultimate that our school provides. And Siddhartha said, if this is it, I still feel kileshas, defilements in my heart. There's still this sense of identification. He was still holding on to the mug full of tea, as it were. There was pain. So that's when he went off on his own, practicing hard, diligently, until he came to the point of, he was about to break, he was about to die, literally, physically. And then he realized this is not the path. And then he came to the conclusion there must be a middle path, softness, not the extremes, the middle path. That is when he understood, and when he became the Buddha, of course, the role of samma samadhi. Because the way he became a Buddha or an Arahant was when he first, the key for it was when he allowed himself to become settled in his seat under the Bodhi tree, and he just asked his heart, his intuition, what is an unstrained, a state of without tension, where I could feel happy. He was resolute in his path. He said, this will be my seat until I attain, but there must be a key. I have not come this far to fail. And his heart just reminded him of a scene, of an experience he had had. A moment of him opening up, relaxing his mind. As a child, he was sitting under a roseapple tree, and he was being cared for by the nurses. He was a crown prince. He was a puny little child, barely able to talk, perhaps. But he sat there, all of a sudden, he went into the first jhana. That is samma samadhi. He did not constrain himself. All the others were involving him straining and pushing, tightening. That's why there cannot be any wisdom. Samma samadhi brings about wisdom. There's wrong samadhi too. That is the one that he was practicing for 6.5 years. This is what many teachers don't understand. Because what happened was over time, you had this Abhidhamma tradition coming up, and especially you had the Visuddhimagga written by Venerable Buddhaghosa in Sri Lanka. And that became the manual of meditation, Buddhist meditation. To this day, thousands of people believe in the infallibility of the Visuddhimagga as the method. Unfortunately, Venerable Buddhaghosa, who wrote the book, never practiced. He never experienced any of these jhanas, even the first jhana. But you have specific information of how to do it so that you can go through the jhanas and the nimittas, which takes us back to the question on the nimitta portion. How valid is it? How important is it? Nimitta, by the way, in English, we can translate it as sign. Nimitta, a sign. Now, it could be a visual sign that you see when you close your eyes, when you're in deep meditation. Sometimes people report, or it could be a texture, it could be a feeling, sensation-based, such as softness, fuzziness, like cotton, so soft. Or, excuse me, light that appears in pitch blackness behind your eyelids. Or suddenly it comes up because you're going deeper and deeper and deeper. Or it could be sensations, as I mentioned, it could be bodily, but as you're moving up the jhanas, when you reach the fourth jhana, already there's no physical sensation to, write home about. There's no such thing, but you still could see things, could feel things. Now, some teachers will mention how these are important. They're guideposts, they're signposts for individuals to proceed this way or that. But I've noticed that they can also become stumbling blocks, glue for the person to get stuck in. I always ask students, what is your goal? Do you want to have these wild experiences and, this and that while you're in it, and then come out and you're still the lousy person you were before? Lousy because you're feeling horrible about this or that. Nothing changed. What is the difference between that and a drug? Really? That's why Lord Buddha, as Siddhartha, left the other teachers. Unfortunately, we have a tradition in Buddhism for the past several centuries, thanks to the commentators, by the way, who are promoting continuously this blind belief in the importance of nimittas. So now you have a slew of students coming in and wanting to have nimitta experiences, signs, this, that. Okay, open up your eyes. You got signs all over the place. Really? What's the big deal about it? So, when a student, for example, in my experience, when students come and ask, I say, okay, smile to it and walk past it. Just ignore it. That's not the goal. What is your goal? Nibbana? Okay, I can help you there. The nimitta is not. But you can talk to your friends about it. Oh, yes. That's what I really discourage students to do, to discuss about their personal experience with each other. They can only discuss it with the teacher. That's it. Because they will put each other in harm's way. And many people do that these days. That's why you have so many discussion groups around the globe today. Buddhist discussion groups. Where after a first or second feed, all of a sudden they're fighting with each other. No, this is right, this is wrong, this. What is this? Craziness. So nimittas are not important. They're good signposts, but they can lead you astray if you give it too much attention. However, well, not to disprove that, but just there's a sutta that I highly recommend from the Majjhima Nikaya, Anupada Sutta 111, middle-length discourses, where you have the perfect example, the perfect answer to this question, in fact, that comes from the experience that Lord Buddha is explaining, describing about Venerable Sariputta's awakening. He's saying how in every single jhana he went through, the six especially, he knew while he was in it that he was in it. And this was happening, this was not happening, this was present, this shouldn't be present, while he was in it. The commentators cannot explain this, because most commentators don't practice. So if I'm going to study neurosurgery or eye surgery, I'm not going to study a book that was written by a mechanic who never held a scalpel or never seen an eyeball. I need to go and study from an expert. So Venerable Sariputta was expert par excellence. And Lord Buddha's explanation of how he went in and out, and he realized that there's more work to be done, all the way to the 9th jhana. That's a perfect explanation, which pretty much shuts down all the other nimitta and, you know, where your consciousness, you don't exist type of a thing. Of course, your body doesn't feel after the 4th jhana. You don't have sensations, yes, but wisdom is there. And that we know from Venerable Sariputta's example. So I hope that answers that question. Go for it. Going once, going twice.
Guess I'm a bit afraid about it might sound silly. So.
Too late. Here's the mic if you like.
So, okay. It's coming up. What's coming up for me lately is not lately, my whole life, fear. So, so this past week I've been having night terrors of being stuck in an elevator. And I got this debilitating feeling of being stuck and I can't get in an elevator. And it's come up for me this week. Just being in an elevator is just like hyperventilating and I just can't get out of it. And I've tried to sit with it. It's like, okay, even in the dream, I'm sitting with it and I'm like, okay, this could be a dream, but I'm not sure. But like, I can't get through the steps. Even if I'm aware of it, I'm trying to observe it. But the panic is too, do you know what I mean? Like just step by step, maybe what can I do to, yeah.
Quick clarifying question. When you say steps, could you enlighten me on that? Like, what do you mean by steps?
I guess I don't know what things I should do to get out of the state. And maybe I can sit with it. Like what's what I say? It's like sit with it, but it's so uncomfortable and unbearable. I don't know. It just keeps coming up. And I just feel like maybe I've got to conquer it or something like that. Or I don't really know the answer, but it came up. So
How
would you approach that?
Sure. First of all, thank you for being vulnerable. And no, you would be surprised. Each of us have our own fears, but we might not necessarily have the same courage as you demonstrated. So first, I want to say that. And secondly, when you mention sit with it, instead of sitting with it, why can't you just sit with yourself? Sit with your body. Right now, you don't have to be looking at me. You can close your eyes the way you're doing. You can put away the mic. It's okay. And whatever the body goes through, it's okay. It's okay. Breathe. Please breathe. Breathe. The body keeps the score. But we have to make room for the body to be. You didn't invite this to yourself. You didn't plan this. Plus, it's happening in your dream. I mean, come on. So, my encouragement, my suggestion would be for you to, instead of forcing yourself to deal with it, sit with it, accept it, or conquer it, all those, putting those aside temporarily, and just be with yourself. Imagine if you were a little girl who's going through this same experience. You're not, they are. And they're sitting right next to you. A little child who comes to you just like you just shared your heart with us. And they open up and they say, this is what's happening. What do you do? Do you say something? Or do you do something?
Oh,
Ah,
okay.
you hold them. Could you hold yourself? When you feel comfortable, perhaps not in this room right now, but I encourage you to go home, or when you are in a safe, secure, wherever you feel safe, to give yourself a nice hug. Nice hug. As if there's no tomorrow. Oh, that's the sign. Ah, good. Good, good. Oh, of course. And could you please get a cup of water, please? Oh, wonderful. See, do you feel the contrast? Did you notice how you took that breath? Mm. Ah. Okay. See the laugh?
So, thank
Mm. As Buddhist monks, we're not allowed to touch a hug. So, but we're big promoters of it for lay people. This is something we don't do enough. Years ago, when I was before being a high school teacher, I was an elementary teacher. And in California, they made the rule that from now on, no matter what happens, you're not allowed to even like put your hand on the shoulder of a child when they come to you sobbing or something happened, they lost their mother or father. You're not allowed to show affection, hugging them. I grew up with that. Like this, not just me, this is a normal thing. When you hit your knees somewhere, what do? You immediately get your hand there and you just rub it. You just put your hand, it's okay. And I was just appalled by the audacity of this inhumanity that they were infusing into the school system. And it just has been going downhill from there. Because I didn't want to, like, if a child came and these were troubled children, and they needed people, they needed to regain their trust in humanity, especially the adults around them. And many of them had come out of prisons. Children. So they needed that touch, that connection. Nope. Okay. No. Deprivation of our humanity. Please don't deprive yourself. Okay? Good. Good. Any other questions? Oh, I think you said there's a follow-up. Uh-huh.
Be about this with our self-definition.
Mm-hmm.
So the follow-up question, back to Sama Samadhi then. What is the relationship between Sama Samadhi and right view?
If you don't have right view, you cannot know what is Samma. Samma means right. It means also wholesome. It can also mean perfection, not just parami. But that is the thing that is allowing the person to also have right view. The right view is allowing the person to have right mindfulness. Sati. Without sati, the person cannot get into samadhi. And they themselves will not have the necessary wisdom necessary, which comes from the 7 factors of awakening, Sattabhojanga's second factor, which is Dhamma Vichaya, the investigation of states. Now, that is the thing which comes in and nudges you on the side and says, what are you doing? What are you doing? What is this love affair you have with this nimitta? Or why am I floating about following this nivarana, this hindrance? These papanchas, these mental proliferations that keep coming up based on maybe triggered by a sensation in the body or a memory. And all of a sudden I'm gone beyond. How will I know if I have samma samadhi? Well, if I have started and I've kept samma ditthi. Ditthi is not a one-time thing. Again, it's like, think of it. So samma ditthi has everything to do with wisdom, by the way. That is the connection. You don't see Dhamma Vichaya as such within the Noble Eightfold Path, the investigation of states, but it is very much present in samma ditthi. Okay? So, to give you perhaps a better example, think of samma ditthi as the headlights on a car that you're driving in pitch blackness. What happens if you go ahead and turn off the headlights while you're still driving the car in pitch blackness? And the streets, there's no streets, by the way. You're in the middle of, I guess, past Alice Springs, you know, Northern Territories. Good luck. So samadhi, without samadhi, trying to meditate, it's ludicrous because it's not, you know, you're going to hit something. And the ego is there because we have the kileshas to work with. You will not identify kileshas. That's why many people who reach a state where there is plenty of upekkha, equanimity of mind, which is the 7th factor of the 7 factors of awakening, many people to this day count that as, oh, I have done it. I have now reached Nibbana. Yes, you have to talk to me in different ways now. You have to approach me. Nonsense! Because you go ahead and scratch the surface, and guess what? The ugliness comes out. The sewage. Whoa. I've met people like this. Students and so-called teachers. You scratch the surface. You ask questions and they get offended. Well, why is that? Asking questions should, as long as it's respectful, it shouldn't be a problem. What happened? The smear of that fake metta melted. Someone yesterday was asking a question as to someone they know who claims to have had piti, which is joy, spiritual joy on top of that. And then tranquility, which is, you know, these two are key factors of the 7 factors of awakening. Now, this person who was asking the question was having a dilemma for a while, apparently. And he said, is it possible that a person could fall off from those states? And I said, what do you mean fall off? Like, you know, become sad, depressed, feels like life is, you know, in shambles, basically. You see that you feel sad for them, which I said, so you mean they have now an akusala state, an unwholesome state? And he said, yes. And I said, that's not spiritual joy, first of all. That cannot be tranquility of mind, which are parts of the 7 factors of awakening. So all these are there, well placed in order, under the careful eyes of samadhi. That's why it's called ditthi. Ditthi means sight, to see. The headlights that tell you where you're steering the car. to the woods, to the bushes, or to the keeping it on the road. So it's absolutely indispensable. It's imperative for samadhi to be in every single one of the Noble Eightfold Path. Does that help? I hope I'm answering, in a satisfactory way. Good. Good. Mm. Oh.
To the retreat that's So I'm going to hand it over to Elise, who's going to tell us a bit more about that, and also to close for the evening.
Thank you so much, Venerable, for such a wonderful, authentic talk to this authentic topic. So before we close, oh yes, and thank you everyone too for such a wonderful participation, for your vulnerable sharings and holding space as well. So before we close, we'd like to invite you, Bhante, to give a dedication of merits or a closing prayer.
So if you could just have your hands in Anjali in front of your heart. Think of the most important people in your life, those that are present in this physical body and those who are not. And by extension, open up to the rest of not just human beings, but all beings, everywhere in the 6 directions. While you open your heart, wish upon them an uplifted state of mind, a smile, a genuine smile, a nice, refreshing, cooling sigh for them to feel a moment of respite, freedom from suffering, albeit short-lived, but at least something that they could cherish as you follow along in your mind, hearing the words in Pali. Akasa tachabo mata deva nagamahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu lokasasanam. Akasa tachabo mata deva nagamahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu desanam. Akasa tachabo mata deva nagamahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu mam paranti. Say sadhu.